gentlemen, welcome to episode 136 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. Now, before we introduce tonight's iconic, legendary name, I would also like to introduce tonight's co-host for this evening, all Power Ranger enthusiasts. First off, the man that is the Ed McMahon to my Johnny Carson, and that is my man, Christopher Patty.
Hey, yo.
Never gonna stop calling you that. You know that, right, Chris? You're always gonna be my Ed.
Alrighty then.
Next up, we have from Jolly Old England, Mr. Kwame Jacobs.
Yo.
I'm so glad you were able to join us tonight, Kwame. I'm just so glad.
Me too. I'm just glad I'm feeling so much better from last time. I'm not ill, thank God.
Likewise, brother.
Glad you're feeling better.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said something, Jess, because we're just about to introduce you now. From the land from down under, Miss Jessie Divine.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
It must be super late for you.
Actually, no. It's 9:59 a.m. right now.
Oh, wow. Okay, early morning.
It's late for me. It's literally midnight. It's going to be approximately 1 a.m. in the morning in just about 1 minute for me.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, before we introduce tonight's guest star for this evening, I just want to say a little history lesson about this man. This man, if you're an 80s child, a 90s child, this man was part of your childhood. If you're a huge fan of Power Rangers, this is the man who in 1993 led a group of very powerful teenagers to save the world. In addition to that, this gentleman is a Power Ranger legend, a Fox Kids legend, and a man that I have been a fan of for many, many years. And before I introduce him, let me just say, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had their Master Splinter. Power Rangers had this gentleman I'm about to introduce. My guest star is Mighty Morphin Power Ranger star and Zordon himself, Mr. David Fielding. David, well, how are you today? Welcome, sir.
I'm good.
It's so good to finally make your acquaintance, sir. I mean, we've already made our acquaintances at MorphinCon 2 months ago, but right. my co-hosts are very honored to see you, sir.
Awesome. Great to meet you guys.
Yeah.
So we're gonna dive right into the questions, sir. And one of the questions is, and this could be a typical cliche question, that is, what inspired you to get into acting? And not only that, how did you get your first start and/or big break into acting? Take us there.
Well, I mean, I grew up reading comic books and watching cartoons and movies and TV just like everybody else. And so I was inspired from a very early age to act out some of the things that I saw on television or movie. I would force my parents to watch me reenact my comic books that I read. And when I was in high school, I got bit by the acting bug and started doing plays and stuff in high school. And to me, that was the closest I could get to actually doing something larger than life, being, putting on a costume, living in a different time period, flying in a spaceship, whatever imagination you have, acting is one of those things that allows you to do that. And so I knew really early on that that's something that I wanted to pursue. So I went to school for it. I went to junior college. I went to an undergrad college, and I eventually went to a graduate college, all for acting. And I spent over a decade learning the craft of acting, doing a number of plays on stage, doing a lot of Shakespeare. But then my real goal was to see if I couldn't be in the movies, because I would sit there and I would watch Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I really wanted to be a part of that. I really wanted to see what it was like. So that's why I moved out to Los Angeles. And 2 months after I moved there, I got called in for an audition for a kids television pilot called Dino Rangers. And I was auditioning for the character of Zoltar, who was a 10,000-year-old wizard trapped in a time warp. And next thing you know, the following week, I was in a makeup chair getting all my hair shaved off and painted green, and I became Zordon.
So cool. Now, I just have to ask you too, like, you got to see, I mean, I can't imagine you not seeing it, but like, you got to see the actual command center physically, right? The physical command center, right?
I've never been there.
Wow.
I've never actually been there. No, I mean, it's in the Los Angeles area, and it's called the House of the Book, and it's a it's a landmark, but I've never actually been there. So
I'm
sorry
shocked.
for the point.
No, I'm shocked, sir, because they usually at MorphinCon they always do trips there every year.
Yeah. I mean, it usually happens the day that I'm flying in, so I always miss that bus trip. So
And before Chris, before we get to your question, let me just say, Mr. Phelan, it's a total honor to see you again. Like I remember, I mean, you saw my face when at MorphinCon. I was so lit up like just to be there. Like I've said it before, MorphinCon felt just like Woodstock, nothing but peace, love, and Power Rangers.
it's pretty overwhelming. Yeah.
Chris, your question, your first question.
So, what are your memories of your audition in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and how you landed the role of Zordon?
I got a phone call from a friend who I met at where I went to my undergraduate school. I went to the Southwest Texas State University, and my friend Stacy Fish was actually working at Saban at the time as a production assistant on their straight-to-video movies that they were doing. And Stacy called me up and said, "Hey, I'm working on this kids television pilot. Do you want to come down and audition for it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That's why I came to Los Angeles." And I went down there thinking that it was going to be a cattle call, that there would be me and 15,000 other guys, and we'd stand in line and we would read lines into a camera, and I would go home and never hear anything because that was the normal process. Or at least that's what I was explained, or told what the process was and what my previous experience of some auditions were like. But when I got down there that later that afternoon, I found out it was just me and another guy. And they told us they were going to cast it today. And would we be available to film next week? And I, of course, said yes. And they gave us the sides to read. And the other gentleman went to one corner and I went to another corner. And we went over the lines a number of times. And then they called him into the audition space first, and I sat outside and just went over the lines. And then when they brought me in about 25 minutes later, that's when I met the director, the producers, the studio heads, and the original cast. I met Walter Jones and David Yost and Austin St. John and Amy Jo Johnson and Audrey Dubois, who was the original Yellow Ranger for the pilot. And they made me stand up on a table, and I basically read the lines that we did for the pilot. And Austin said, well, I guess we found our Zoltar. And the next thing I know, I got a phone call saying, "Congratulations, you got the part."
That's so cool. And the voice of Zordon, like, because I know you did the face, and then they had a voice doing it. Was the gentleman named Robert Malahan?
Yeah, I did the voice for the first 31 episodes. Robert
Okay.
took over after I left Los Angeles. Yeah.
Did you like when you did the voice of Zordon? Did you base it like what was the inspiration on doing that voice? Like, how did you come up with the voice?
Well, when we were in the audition, the other gentleman was sitting across the room from me, and I could hear him going over the lines, and he was doing a real sort of mad scientist take on the character. It was very quirky and a little bit more high pitched. So his Zordon was, "Hey, welcome to the command center." And I was like, I don't really think that's the choice they want. And I grew up reading a lot of superhero stories. I read a lot of Greek myth when I was growing up. And when I was in high school, I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. And so I was very familiar with, and doing Shakespeare and doing plays and doing theater, I was very familiar with characters who were much larger than life, and they had a very commanding presence. And I thought, well, this character seems to be something of that sort. So I tried to channel my inner Zeus and imagine that Zordon was this big, large entity sitting on top of a mountain and speaking down to these kids. And that's the voice that I came up with, something very deep and resonating, and something that was, pretty serious, something that people would pay attention to. That's what I came up with.
I understand. I was just curious to know too. Do you think that the creators of Power Rangers, like, they got some kind of inspiration from the Wizard of Oz with Zordon, because without the guy behind the curtain though? Because it looks very similar though. Like, do you see the inspiration there or no?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. There's always going to be an inspiration for something, and Zordon is an American invention for the TV show because in the Zoo Ranger Sentai from Japan, there is no Zordon. They just had Barza, and he was sort of like this quirky little wizard character that kind of helped them out, but didn't really exert the same kind of influence that Zordon did. And so I was never in the room when they came up with the design for the character. I was never really given any sort of backstory or motivation for the character. It was just, he's a 10,000-year-old wizard. He's trapped in a time warp. Go. And that was it.
Ah, okay. Kwame, your first question.
All right. Did you have any input on Zordon's character development or storyline?
I got to know Tony Oliver really well, who was the head writer in the show, and Tony and I talked a lot about writing, and I was actually crafting a number of scripts that Tony was going to look at because I was really kind of disappointed that they only filmed the character one time, and I was never going to be on set with the other characters. I was never going to interact with them again after that initial pilot shooting. So I was trying to figure out some way to get a larger presence on the show, and I like to write. I like to tell stories, and so I talked to Tony a lot about this. But as far as developing Zordon or adding anything to his character, no, I never got a chance to do that. I mean, the sound recording sessions that we had to record voices for the episodes that they shot was pretty cut and dried. I would just go in there and say the lines they were written, and because they were under a time crunch, they had to get these things done in a certain amount of time, and so there wasn't a whole lot of time to sit around and discuss this and discuss that. It was just get in there, get it done, and go home and go on to the next thing.
I see. Yeah, when it's a time schedule, the pressure, I get that.
Yeah, and because the show was sort of framed for a very specific demographic, basically 5 to 7-year-old kids, they didn't really get a whole lot of depth into the show. It's there's a whole lot of surface. It's still a lot of fun. It's still a lot of amazing stuff with stunts and action, and it's all it can, some of the episodes can still engender a very emotional response for people. I mean, the Green with Evil saga always gets people, it pulls you in no matter what age you are, but they were really directing it towards a certain demographic. So there wasn't a whole lot of explanation about how these things came about or why these characters were doing them. They just did them.
Yeah, and I was just telling Kerrigan too. We had Kerrigan on the show recently, and I was just telling him how that Greenwood Evil episode, like that whole series was just a work of art, like how it was split into 5 parts. Usually when you have that kind of saga, it usually lasts like 3 episodes. But here they actually went a different route and went 5 episodes.
Yeah. And poor Zordon was in the first one and then disappeared for the rest of them. Yeah.
But you mentioned also too, like about like we touched a little bit about like how Zordon's backstory in this past though. Like, could you imagine, like, since you are the OG, you're the original Zordon, could you imagine what his backstory, even like what his past would have been like, especially given like we don't know like what the exact friction was between him and Rita Repulsa?
I'm a big fan of the work that Kyle Higgins and Ryan Parrott did for the Boom Studio Comics. For me, that's the backstory of Zordon.
Okay.
So if you read those comic books, they go into a great amount of detail about what's going on with that story and who those characters were before they became what we recognize them as on the show.
Hey, when I do, I'll add that to my headcanon.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna add that to my
same.
book list because I need to read that now.
Yeah, I really would love for them to do an animated version of that, so we could bring us all back and do our voices and stuff, and being able to do the live read of the Shattered Grid at Power Morphicon in 2018 that's a highlight for me. That was a great little show that we did. So yeah,
That was
So cool. And Jess, you know what? Before you ask your question, Jess, I want Chris to ask this question because we talked about this earlier, and you just brought up something very interesting, Mr. Phelan, about like how like that to bring everybody back though. Chris and I, we were actually we had a question that supports you, and we just want to get your opinion on this. So go ahead, Chris, and ask that question we talked about earlier that you wanted to ask Mr. Fieldman.
Did it at all bother you that they didn't use you for the live action Power Rangers movie?
They had called me when they were going to film it in Los Angeles. They wanted to know where I was and if I would be available to come back out to if they were going to film it. But once they decided to film it in Australia to save money, I never heard another thing. I never heard another word about it. So it didn't really bother me because at that point I had kind of moved on and was doing other things. I was working in the computer game industry and doing voiceovers for computer games and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed my time on the show, as brief as it was. I mean, that wasn't the reason that I left LA. I left LA because I wasn't auditioning, I wasn't working as an actor. I was working jobs trying to stay afloat and pay my rent, and afraid, I was going to be living under a bridge from week to week. So that was my only reason for leaving LA, is I was just emotionally and mentally burnt out by the whole experience of competing day in and day out with the thousands of other people that are desperately trying to make it in that industry. It's very tough. I went out there very late. I was 29 when I went out to Los Angeles. If I'd gone out to Los Angeles when I was 22 or 23, I probably would have stuck it out a lot more, may even been still living out there. But because I was 29 and my tolerance for BS was really low, I understood very quickly that the industry was going to ask me to change a number of things about my personality, or change a number of things that I was not very comfortable with doing. So I decided that, well, I went out here. I kind of was able to check off one of the boxes that I wanted to do on my accomplishments, and I did get to be on a TV show, even though it was very brief, and then I just went back to the East Coast and started working on other things. So yeah, but I mean, it would have been fun. I would have loved to have done the movie, because that was one of the reasons I went to LA. And Karen Ashley and Johnny Bosch have both said, well, they should have brought you out, man. But it is what it is. Nothing I can do about it.
Oh,
That's always 2020.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Mr. Fielding, what was the name of the guy who played the physical, like when in the 1995 movie of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, when he was dying? Do you know the name of that actor?
Yeah, his name is Nicholas Bell.
Whatever happened to him?
As far as I know, he's still alive and living in Australia.
Oh, okay. Did you get to like meet him and like hang out with him during set?
No, I was never there. I was never on set with anybody.
Wow.
You
Sorry.
weren't there.
That's unfortunate, because you should have been there.
Yeah, man, I agree.
You're Zordon.
You're literally Zordon.
Big
That's-
blue head, that's me.
That's like going to a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle screen and not having the guy that played Master Splinter.
Well, I mean, it's kind of par for the course with Saban about how they did things. I mean, they were very business focused, very cut corners and save as much money as possible, because that's what it was about. I mean, I didn't take anything personally. I don't think it was that they didn't like me or anything like that. I think it was just that they did what was most expedient, what was the quickest and easiest way to do it. I think that was the reason they did it.
And I'm gonna ask this question like next, but I want Jess to ask her question. So Jess, ask your first question.
Of course. What was the rehearsal process like for Zordon?
There was no rehearsal process for Zordon.
Wasn't one, no.
Again, the process of putting the show together was very quick. I was the last thing that they filmed for the pilot shoot. They had been filming for 3 weeks. And when we finally got to the warehouse where I was going to film the Zordon part, most of the crew and the director were sick. They had come down with the flu. They'd been working so hard and so long that they were all sick. So I was 60 feet away from all of those people, and there was just huge giant lights in my face, and there was no rehearsal. I was given the lines, and I memorized the lines before I showed up, and I got into the makeup chair and had my head shaved, and they put green paint all over me and stuck me up against a green screen. So the only thing that was going to show up on the film was my head. And I think we might have gone through like a very brief line through where we just read through the words, and then they turned the cameras on and we did it 4 or 5 times. And then I did a bunch of facial expressions for them and did some crazy stuff. And then they wrapped and I went to my night job, and that's what I did.
Hmm. Okay.
I mean, the pilot was much different than actually working on the series must have been, because again, the schedule for the series was so quick. They were filming 3 or 4 episodes a week. Anytime that they had to do scenes in the juice bar, they did 3 or 4 episodes in the juice bar that week. And so those kids were memorizing lines left and right all over the place, and working 15-hour days, 6 days a week to get all of the shots they needed for the 40 episodes that the first season was supposed to be. And because it was so popular, they tacked on an extra 20 at the end. So the first season of Power Rangers is 60 episodes. It's crazy.
This is why the Screen Actors Guild exists.
And that's another thing. I mean, Power Rangers was a non-union show. There was no union member there. There was no representation for the actors or the crew for that matter. And so that was the major reason why Austin and Walter and Twee, left the show. They were trying to get better wages for not only for themselves but for the crew members as well, but didn't work out.
Was it
pretty unfortunate? Quite unfortunate, isn't it, guys?
It was, but was it amicable or was like the opposite?
That's probably a better question for the guys who were actually there at the time. I mean, I've heard the story over and over at different conventions about who, their side of the story. And having spoken with Heinz Saban himself, having been, seen how he reacts to people who want to leave the show, I'm inclined to believe that, he was not going to budge. He was not going to give them anything that they wanted. So to protect their integrity or their stance, they said, okay, well, we're going to leave then. And they did.
Wow.
Wow.
I had a question that was somewhat related to that, Mr. Phelan, because and this is related to merchandising though, because I at the time, like, I was one of those kids that would always buy, like, one of we had so many guest stars on the show, and they said one of the biggest sellers is merchandise, and I was just curious to know, because I was one of those kids that actually bought the command center and pretended to be you, like doing the Zordon voice with the toy, because I remember in 1994 they came out with this kick-ass, I don't know if everyone remembers this, but they came out with this kick-ass command center where you actually have it's like a radio like thing where you can talk into to like pretend like you're Zordon, and I just thought it was super cool. Did you get any royalties from any kind of like merchandise?
I didn't. No.
That sucks.
After I had left the show, shortly after it went on the air. So the pilot was in late August of 93, August 28, 1993. That was when the first episode of Power Rangers aired on Fox Kids. And I left Los Angeles in late September. So it had only been on the air for about a month when I left. And when I got back to the East Coast around Christmas time, I was in the mall shopping for Christmas presents, and everybody was rushing over to KB Toys. And I'm like, what's the big toy this year? And I went in there, and they were all fighting over Power Rangers. And I saw the Power Dome up there on the shelf of the command center, and I saw my face there, and I was like, "Oh wow, I'll never see a dime of that."
Wait, didn't anyone recognize you?
Oh no, nobody knew who I was.
Okay, at
That's
least
terrible.
at least they weren't piling you.
No,
Well, I'm glad he was safe. I'm glad Mr. Villain was safe.
Yeah, it would have been so funny. You got recognized and you would have had fans all over you.
It'd be like when the fans bum rushed the Beatles.
Wait, did that happen with the Beatles?
I mean, when the Beatles, they were trying, I think they made a parody of this, but I could be wrong here, but I think the Beatles were trying to stay in disguise. Someone recognized them and their cover was blown, so they just tried to make a run for it.
Oh yeah. You know how they do that running gag in cartoons and movies?
Yep, that's exactly what I was referring to.
I think they did that in Cartoon Network too at one point.
Yes, they did.
They did it a few times, you know.
Oh, they did an excellent job on that. Chris, your next question.
What was the most difficult scene or episode you had to film?
I only had to film one, so all I filmed was the pilot stuff, and that was fairly easy because all I had to do was sit there in the chair and repeat the lines over and over. I was never on set. I was never ever filmed again. They just recycled that footage over and over, and I just went in and replaced the lines of dialogue. So it's very boring and very disappointing, I know, to hear that Zordon, who appears to be such a presence and a force in the show, really wasn't all that involved with the making of it. So yeah, sorry about that.
And that's unfortunate because you were a major part of the success of Power Rangers. I mean, without Zordon, there would be no Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah, it's all my fault.
You did a wonderful, you did a wonderful thing for us fans. I'll say that. And I do want to talk.
Pete, can I say something here though?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I seem to recall though that there was a scene with your character, and I guess maybe this was just like a footage lifted from Super Sentai, where Zordon himself, I guess, has this flashback where his physical body, I guess, was battling some putties, and yeah, I kind of forget what the context was, but I think maybe that was touched on.
He had to find a flower somewhere. Wasn't that it? And he was in the white robe. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, maybe he was in the white robe and he had like this like blue mask over his head.
Yeah, I think that's Barza from the Zoo Rangers Sentai show. So they just, again, they lifted that footage from the Sentai and plugged it in. But that wasn't me. I never did anything like that. So.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, because you know when he said like that, because I remember from episode 1, the very first episode where Zordon's introducing himself and they show Rita through the viewing globe, and you know the character you mentioned from Zoo Ranger, we saw him for a split second.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think in the first episode we see Rita on the bike, and I don't think we ever see her ride the bike ever again after that.
Yeah, it was a one-time thing, and yeah, it was never happened again. Or wait, hold on, that's a lie. She did it twice, if I'm not mistaken. She did do it twice.
You should have done it more. I think it was more of her character, like in Zoo Ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would have. I don't think they ever had any plans for Zordon to come outside of the tube and to help.
He's trapped in there.
I think that's a strength of the character, actually, because Zordon's role is basically to encourage the Power Rangers and in turn encourage the kids who are watching it to stand up for themselves, to protect their friends, and to know that, you know, they're going to be able to do it, that they have the ability to solve whatever problem that they're facing. But as far as I know, there was never any plans to bring Zordon outside of the tube because, of course, there was no merchandise for Zordon. There was no toy for Zordon. There was no way to sort of push that character to the forefront. So Zordon was just an exposition character who would explain things and then return to the tube, I guess.
Basically, you know, just watch and observe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could have done a lot more for the character, and they could have just meshed him more from series with Zoo Ranger.
Oh yeah, damn straight, Chris.
Yeah, and I want to get actually this too. This is gonna be a question with a follow-up question because I want to get your opinion on this. Did you, Mr. Phelan, did you watch the Power Rangers Turbo and in Space seasons?
I have seen bits and pieces of both of them. Yes.
Okay. Well, my first question for you is: in Power Rangers Turbo, unfortunately they replaced Zordon with Demetria. And I just want to get your reaction of when they did that and how you felt about them replacing Zordon with Demetria.
Well, I found all about that in hindsight. I was not watching the show while I was doing whatever I was doing on the East Coast. I sort of lost touch with it. I had no idea that it was still going at that point. Um, so having to go back and learn the history of what happened through the character, uh, I'm not really sure why they did that. I'm not sure what the thought process behind that or the decision making process was that. I don't know if they got studio notes saying that this Zordon footage is stale. It's not going anywhere. It's just repetitive over and over, or if they just wanted to bring in a new character to excite kids or something like that. I have no idea. But yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, and the next question, the follow-up question I have for you is, in Power Rangers in Space, I mean, they did a storyline where Astronomer kidnapped Zordon and held him hostage against his will. So and there was a two-parter finale episode called Countdown to Destruction Part 1 and 2, in which Andros had to destroy Zordon in order to purify all the evilness in the world. I was universe, pardon me. I was just curious to know, sir, if you saw this episode and your reaction to how Zordon's demise.
Yeah, I've seen it quite a number of times. My reaction is that I thought it was a very honorable way for the character to go out because he made the ultimate sacrifice to sort of bring things to a closure. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was emotionally impactful because Andros was fighting really hard not to do what he had been asked to do. Um, so I thought from a dramatic standpoint, from a character standpoint, I thought it was handled very well. I thought it was a good choice, and there are a lot of people that come up and talk to me about how it traumatized them as kids and how they didn't want Zordon to die, and I always have to try to remember, well, Zordon wasn't actually there. Zordon was projecting himself into the power chamber from the time warp. So whenever Andros shattered the power chamber, he just cut off Zordon's connection to this dimension of reality. Zordon's still out there somewhere. You just got to go find him. And that circles back to Cosmic Fury, or this once and always special where Billy is trying really hard to locate Zordon. He knows that Zordon's out there somewhere.
I just love the continuity they did in once a Ranger. I just loved what they did. It was the continuity was there, and it was just well done. Um, and just before you ask your question, because I believe you have the next question, I just want to ask Mr. Fielden to, well, I'm not going to ask this. I'm going to let my buddy here, Kwame, ask this because this is a recurring gag that we have on our show that we ask every single Power Ranger star, and we definitely wanted to ask you this question. So go ahead, Kwame, and ask this question to Mr. Fielden.
Sure. How does it feel to be a legend?
It's very surreal and it's very humbling to know that there are people all around the world who know my name, who know my face, who look up to me in a certain sense, who have told me so many stories over the years about what the show meant to them and what my character meant to them. It's a very humbling experience to know that you've touched people's lives all around the world, and I always try to honor that when when I meet people and talk to people about the character. It's too easy to make fun of the character. It's too easy to make fun of the show because it is very cheesy and rated G and all that kind of stuff. But what it means to somebody inside is something that needs to be very sacred and protected. And so I always try to honor what people like about the character, and I always try to stand up for what the characters are supposed to be. So the only way I can really sort of express this is that it's something I'm very, very grateful for. It's something that has allowed me to travel to places I normally wouldn't have been able to travel, and to meet people from all walks of life, and to hear their stories, and to know that I did something kind of cool. So that's what it's like to be a legend, I guess.
Awesome stuff. Jess, your question.
Yeah. Okay. How did you interact with the other cast members off set?
I guess we said kind of hi in passing, and well, our interactions at the conventions these days are a lot more dynamic. When I filmed the part for the show, it was so brief, and they were so far away from me. They were 60 yards away from me, 60 feet away from me, uh, because of nobody wanted to get sick or anything like that. And then I didn't see them again for 20 years. And getting to know them again at conventions and going to dinner and telling stories and learning about the families that they've made and the other projects that they've gone on and done, and getting to meet new Rangers from new seasons, and it does feel in some ways that I am kind of like an uncle or a grandfather in a way to all of these Power Rangers. So it's just a lot of fun to know that I know all these people, and they're all pretty great. So yeah.
Like yourself, sir.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I try, but I'm just like everybody else. I fall down sometimes. So yeah.
I have a special tribute that I want to show you later. But what were we gonna say, Jess? I'm sorry. You were gonna say something?
Well, going to conventions and being like a family to the Rangers from every season sounds really nice.
It's very cool because I don't think I've ever met a Power Ranger actor who wasn't a superhero at heart. They're all how do I put it? They're all very open. They all are so happy to meet you, and it's just a lot of fun to see them enjoying each other and enjoying the fans. It's just a fun time.
Oh, I can totally agree because back in 2018 when I was at MCM Comic Con for the first time. Yeah, I think it was the first time I had my really close friend with me. Well, I see him as a brother. He's like my brother in arms. We've known each other since school. When we got to meet the Thunder Rangers for the very first time, we absolutely just lost it. We were actually the very first ones there. There was nobody else.
Oh
I was
wow.
actually talking to one of their agents. I was actually having a nice long chat with them because I was just waiting for them to get back. I got to check out the book. You know the one, Peter, you know the one you got, right?
Yeah, it's packed there, but I know what you're talking about, the visual guide, right?
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
one.
man, I wish I had that book out right now.
Yeah, I know, right? But honestly, when I got to see the Thunder Rangers for the very first time in front of me, it felt like my entire world just literally leveled up in the most craziest way in all of my life. And when Wes came, the Red Time Force Ranger, honestly, I'm like, he
Jason
really
Fong?
is just like his character. Like, Jason Font's one of the nicest guys I've ever met, along with the Thunder Rangers. Adam, he's Hunter, the Crimson Thunder Ranger.
I really enjoy the Time first season. That's a great season, and
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh,
Same.
they're just
Honestly.
they're just wonderful people. I'm very good friends with both Vernon Well and Kate Sheldon. They're just wonderful human beings.
Yeah.
And
Adam, Adam and Giorgito are just one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And Adam, he is so much fun to talk to,
oh,
honestly.
he's a sweetheart. And
Such a cool guy.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mr. Fielden,
Just like
sorry, go ahead.
when you said that, who was the sweetheart again?
What?
Who was the sweetheart, Pete said?
Oh, Adam
Adam.
Tumenham. He's Hunter Bradley.
Oh.
He's the Crimson Thunder Ranger from Ninja Storm.
Cool. Just like Kerrigan said that Richard Cancino is a sweetheart.
You
I'll
know,
always
we
remember
interviewed
that.
him. He's a
But
great guy.
And I enjoyed it.
we're gonna bring him back one day, and I also want to try to bring Michael Sorich on the show because I told him he
Cool.
gave me nightmares one time as the Terror Toad, and he laughed about that.
Oh
Uh,
God, you're
See
actually
that?
gonna bring him on the show.
Mr. Phelan, did you see that book, that visual guide? It was like has every season from Mighty Morphin to I believe Beast Morphers. Did you see that book or no?
Is it the one with the red cover?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
That's my yearbook. I've got a lot of signatures.
Okay.
Yes, he has it.
Okay, so you've seen the pictures then.
Yeah.
I do want to show you this, sir, because I did pay tribute to you last year because I'm a huge Power Ranger fan. I'm a huge David Phelan fan, and I made this in honor of Power Rangers 30th anniversary. I constructed this. I mean, I think I showed you this already, but I constructed this with two pizza boxes, and you're actually honored on it. You're right there in the blue.
Nice.
I put
Yeah, I see it too. Yeah, I see it.
and this is I want to see if I can zoom in, but that's every character from all seasons. I handcrafted over 400 characters, every villain, ally, you name it. Took me 4.5 months to make, but it was worth it.
Yeah, Peter's
He
very
worked
good
really
at
hard.
dioramas. He's very good at them.
Yeah,
And-
he works really hard on it.
And,
Legit.
and I want to show something else to Mr. Fielding, but I gotta prepare it. So in the meantime, Chris, you have a question, so exit to Mr. Fielding.
What's your favorite fan interaction or memory?
What's my favorite fan interaction or memory? Oh wow, good question. There's been a lot of them. I wish I could remember his name. We had one fan who had a medical condition. He was always on a respirator. Always very inspiring to see him. And then unfortunately he passed at some point, and all of us got together online. Individually we sent messages. We made sure that his family knew that we recognized him, we knew him. And sometimes when we go to Ranger Stop, because he would always show up at Ranger Stop and he's not there, and we kind of missed him. So I think that's one of my favorite fan interactions. It's the top one though, I think, has to be the live read that we did for Shattered Grid. That is it was the first time that Barbara Goodson, who was the voice of Rita, and I actually got to interact on stage together, and to hear the voices live, to read the lines live, it was just really, really special. So yeah, those two, I think.
And you did the line, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mr. Fielding, but you did the line in the opening of Mighty Morphin where it's Barbara saying, "After 10,000 years, I'm free. It's time to conquer Earth." And you finally go, "Alpha, Rita has escaped." That's you, right? Saying that?
Yes, that's me.
Okay.
It's him. It's him.
And another way I meant to, you know what, tonight I'm just trying to flatter Mr. Fielding because I'm such a huge fan of this man's work. So I'm gonna do it again, and I want to surprise you with this. And this is a history to how far I go back with Mighty Morphin. Actual lunchbox I had, my parents bought me first day of kindergarten. I actually have a picture of that too. First day of kindergarten, meaning my first day back after COVID. Same lunchbox. First day of work.
Classic Peter.
Yep, first day of
Classic
work.
Peter.
First day of work versus first day of kindergarten. But that's
Classic Peter and modern Peter.
We have a couple of questions before we wrap up, Mr. Field. And one of the questions I have for you, and this goes, of course, about the legacy of yourself and Power Rangers in general, and that is, what do you think of the impact that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has caused a new generation of fans 31 years after its initial release?
I think that's probably one of the proudest things that I take with me everywhere about the show, is that the show has inspired at least 3 generations of people that I know. The kids that watched it in the original 90s, in the 93, 94 years or whatever, they've grown up to become parents, and they're introducing their kids to the show. And the parents of those kids who watched the show in the 90s, I've met them. And so there's like 3 generations of people who have been touched by Power Rangers. And so many of the people that watched the show in its original series have gone on to careers that was inspired by Power Rangers. They become EMTs, they become doctors, nurses, they've gone and served in the military, because the show inspired them to try to live up to the ideal that these heroes had, that we need to stand up for people that can't stand up for themselves, to stand by your friends, to do the right thing whenever you're called upon. So I think that's the legacy of Power Rangers. That's why the show lasts. That's why it stayed around as long as it has, is because it inspires people to be heroic in whatever way it can be. Yeah. And that heroism takes many different forms. It's not always on the front lines and in a wearing a uniform. It's just being there for a friend when they need you, or rescuing them from a desperate situation of some sort. But it may be a silly superhero, color-coded, very bright and shiny show, but on a deeper level, it means a lot more than that to people. So
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And one of the we're gonna ask. We have a couple more questions before we wrap up, and one of the final questions I have for you, sir, is and we just talked about legacy here. How do you want fans to remember Zordon? Like, how do you want the legacy of Zordon to be remembered in your own beliefs?
I think they're doing a pretty great job of it right now. I mean, I don't think there's anything I could add to it. I mean, they just like the character, they enjoy the character, and every time I meet somebody new, they turn into that little 6-year-old kid watching the show for the first time, and that's just a really wonderful experience. So yeah.
Do you have any favorite Zordon lines?
May the power protect you is always a good one. Teleport to the command center is another good one.
Yeah.
No, Tommy, no. That's a good one too. I mean, there's a number of them.
Look at the viewing globe.
Yeah, May the Power
Pretend to
Protect You. I
be.
actually got it on one of my pages, and when I'm introducing myself to my new followers, I always say May the Power Protect You at the very end.
Yeah.
It's a good saying.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna wrap up here. We're gonna get our final questions and comments from our co-host. I'm gonna ask my final one following that. So we're gonna start around the room. So we're gonna start with the lady from down under, and that is you, Miss Divine. Final comments or questions for Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you. Well, David, thank you so much for doing Zordon while I'm up to season 1, episode 6 of Morphin Power Rangers.
Nice.
Thanks. And I'll finish the rest of it when I can and stuff.
Enjoy. It's a good show.
Thanks, David. I'm enjoying it already.
You bet. Great to meet you.
Same. You too.
Quam, you know this part. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for making all our childhoods legendary, David. And also, I always like to add this for me, Peter, and everyone else on the show. I like to make it look interesting. Are there any questions you want to ask us?
At this point, no. I mean, I always ask it at the table. Why is Power Rangers important to you? I mean, and that's a question that has many parts and many answers. So, yeah.
Well, I'll give you one, because you did say most of them on your previous statement, which literally was inspiring anyway. Yeah, it's really inspiring. Teaches us how to be heroic instead of thinking about ourselves, etc., etc. Building stronger friendships with others, and pretty much, anyone can be a hero. I mean, out of any commercial you watch or video game, you name it. Especially there was one that I absolutely love. It's from Bionicle. The narrator said, basically, in How to Be a Hero, at the very end when he says, "It's not what you got, it's what you do with it that makes you a hero." That line just, so powerful.
Yeah, it's not the words you use, it's the actions.
Exactly.
Totally agree.
Literally.
Was that it, Quam, or you had more?
Oh yeah, just one more. Yeah, like I said, Power Rangers is also inspiring. I mean, honestly. Theme songs are too freaking catchy. I always have like
Yes.
to rock. I always like rocking into it because it makes you feel like you're actually in the series and you want to actually be a ranger and help save the world. It's a bit fluff. You
Mhm.
actually want to fight and save the world, and pretty much just the theme song is so catchy. It's really inspiring as well.
It really is, Quan Quan. There, that one line in that song where they go, "No one could ever take them down. The power's on their side." That to me,
Yeah,
what nails it to me. That scene,
me
I'm like,
too.
let's go, let's go.
I know. LFG, let's freaking go. And
Oh,
plus, one more thing, Power Rangers is also extremely entertaining.
yes, it is.
I agree, big time.
Yeah, that's my last statement anyway. But yeah. At least Jess agrees. I mean, also Jess, you got a long way to go on the rest of the Power Ranger series, so good luck.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be a fun ride.
Thank you.
You'll love it.
Thanks.
It's a
You're gonna
fun
have a fun
ride.
ride on it.
I sure am.
Hmm.
Christopher,
Chris, you're up, bro. Go ahead,
You're
Chris.
next.
Well, I actually got a few things to say here.
Please.
Go on.
Most of them are questions.
My mic is onto you.
Why, thank you. So, what stands out most about you to me is you seem to have the most, I guess, what's the word for it? Well, overall knowledge, for lack of a better phrase, of the entire franchise itself. You not only know the series that you were part of, but you also know the original Japanese series, Z Ranger, and you've also followed the comics themselves. You've also gone on to follow a bunch of the entire franchise by and large itself too, which is also rather impressive because most of the stars we have on here are only involved with the parts they were in.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, he has a point there.
And when you say that there is actually, I guess, 5 to 7 demographic for Power Rangers, what would you say was probably the demographic for Z Ranger?
I think Zoo Ranger was aimed at preteens, so like your 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds. The Zoo Ranger series is a lot darker than the Power Ranger series. I don't want to spoil anything for Jess, but the Green Ranger saga in the Zoo Ranger is completely different from the one that happens in the US version of the show, the Power Rangers.
He's right.
So the culture, the Japanese culture is or at least when the Zoo Ranger was on, wasn't so how do I put it? The Japanese youth was a little bit more mature than American audiences were, so they were a little bit more conditioned to face tougher and darker subject matter than the kids who watch Saturday morning or afternoon cartoon shows and stuff. So uh
You
trying
could
to
say for PG-13 as opposed to G-rated.
yeah, definitely PG-13. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a whole big campaign that they had to do during the first season of Power Rangers, where they had to make public service announcements, PSAs, telling kids not to kick each other in the head or not to, react violently, because there was so much karate and kung fu in the show that they were afraid that kids were going to beat each other up on the playground. So they had to do those PSAs. Whereas in the Zoo Ranger show, it is a little bit they don't sugarcoat the violence that much. It's still a PG-13 kind of violence, but I mean it does have a little bit more of a little bit of an edge to it, I guess. So
Yeah, I can respect that. I mean, I've watched Super Sentai all my life. I mean, 2008 was when I first discovered it anyway, and I got to learn the history of how Power Rangers started anyway. I know the differences between Super Sentai and Power Rangers because I can tell by the footage, I can literally tell by the footage. And also, don't forget, because you know how Power Rangers has less episodes than Super Sentai has more episodes, like 50 episodes,
Right.
And like you said, David, the subjects they're not afraid to talk about. It's more darker on some areas. Super Sentai is not scared to literally show some brutal bits,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not afraid to go there.
Exactly, Chris. That's what I'm saying, you know?
If you guys watch Tubi, it's a streaming service that you can download the app to your TV and watch movies and stuff through Tubi. They actually have some of the Sentai series on Tubi. You can actually watch the full series there. So check that out.
Okay. I know a few ways. I do watch Super Sentai if I'm in a good mood for it, or I just need to just check something out, or you name it.
Yeah.
Me and Peter have two minds of this. He thinks that the Power Rangers franchise should just go ahead and fade out into the sunset now that it's over. Me, on the other hand, I'm a firm believer that the end is not the end.
Same here, because I've heard they're not done. They got more plans.
Well, all right. What do you think those plans are, Quan? Because first I'm hearing of it.
Oh, you didn't hear?
No.
All right. I heard about this on X when I said Power Rangers is not over. They're just taking probably a long hiatus since Dino Cosmic Fury's over now, because it was the final showdown. We don't know the plans yet. All I heard is we're gonna be getting big plans for Power Rangers in the future.
Okay.
That's all I heard. That's all I heard for now, bro. Just gotta wait and see from the get-go, you know?
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, man.
Well, sir, what do you think direction they should take?
Who knows? I mean, it could be anything.
I mean, Mr. Fielding.
Yeah,
what
what
do
do you think, Dave?
Yeah.
What direction do I think they should take?
Yeah.
Power Rangers. That's a really tough one because there are a dozen different ways you could take the franchise. Personally, I would like to see them do an animated show, which
Based on the comics.
Oh yeah, definitely.
based on the comics, or maybe some original scripts as well. But I think you can do a lot more with the animated medium than what you could do with like a kid's TV show. So going to different planets, going to different dimensions, you can do that fairly easily with animation and not have to spend a ton of money doing sets and stuff like that. And as much as I love watching the practical effects of the fights and stuff and the choreography of the fight sequences between the Rangers and whoever the villain of the week is, and that kind of thing, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I think that the dynamic quality of like Into the Spider-Verse could work really, really well for Power Rangers. Tell the story in a different kind of way and just take it leaps and bounds beyond what they're doing, what they've done in the past. So that would be my main direction is to go animated with it.
Yeah, I mean that would be cool because somewhat I think this month or probably next month, most of you heard, they're making that new Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game. It's Reader's Rewind.
I didn't know that.
Oh my god, you don't check out the news? Okay, fine. I might as well.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay, I might as well just fill you guys in anyway. It's this new game. It's still in development, and it's doing the events of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always. So Once and Always is canon. Basically, Robo Reader actually goes back in time to pretty much talk to her past self and give her knowledge of the future. And of course, our Rangers we love.
Ooh.
Gotta stop her before she pretty much messes up history.
Clever plot.
Yeah, I know, right? So Robo Reader, she's canon.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, dude. I'm surprised you guys didn't even hear about this because that's one of the games of Power Rangers I really want to play. I've got my childhood one that I've been dying to play all my life. I've got Power Rangers Super Legends, but I'm definitely gonna get Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rewind when it comes on Steam.
I'm definitely going to try that game out. Chris, you said you had more, right? You had a lot to say.
Yeah, you did, didn't he?
Yeah, I was just gonna also point out that I often have this vision that at some point, considering the age of like most of the fans of the Power Rangers franchise now, that they would have actually maybe done a direct analog towards Super Sentai and Power Rangers itself, because I mean we've all grown up, we've all been exposed to violence, and not many of us are going to complain about what we would see on Super Sentai these days. And so, yeah, if they could actually just like maybe take the series in that kind of direction, we'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that would like to have a much more mature version of Power Rangers where not necessarily R-rated, but something that was a little bit more grim and darker, where the stakes were a little bit higher, a little bit more costly. I think fans would get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, if that did happen, it would probably be PG-13, or maybe it'll be the age rating would probably be on a 15. Yeah, it'll be 15.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure if NC-17 is below an R or not, but
Yeah,
I
like
think
you said,
I think that's actually above an R.
is it above an R?
yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
It's above R. It's above
literally-
MA.
It's above R.
In fact, that's actually how South Park avoided the NC-17 rating and kept the R rating.
I
Yeah.
think they kept
There's
the
a
MA.
limited number of the time you could say the word fuck, and they pretty much just like did that number just right below it, and so they could keep it R rated.
They did the same
Mhm.
thing with the word shit. You remember they had that episode where they had a countdown how many times they said shit uncensored?
I think so.
Wait. Did they?
Yes, they did. It was called "It Hits the Fans." That was the name of the episode.
I did not see that. Oh god,
Oh.
you got to show me.
I gotta show you that. But Chris, tell me, you have a lot to say. Tell us.
He's got more.
I don't know if I necessarily have more, but yeah, I guess I'll just leave with this. You've definitely been a very impactful voice, and definitely appreciate you being on the show, as well as like being part of our childhoods. And yeah, more power to you with like nerding out with us on this whole thing, because we didn't really like up until now meet anyone who was from Power Rangers who actually had this much knowledge of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed my time here.
I have before I say my final comment, so I just have a final question for you, and this is for every guest star I ask on the show, and that is, what is next for David Fielden? Now, Mr. Fielden, this is a part of our show where this is an open forum, open mic. You can talk about anything, promote, hype, say anything you like. I am passing the proverbial microphone on to you. The floor is yours, Mr. Fielden.
Well,
Mine's there too.
I don't really have anything in the pipeline. I'm just sort of waiting for this election cycle to go over and see where we're going to be at the end of that.
I think we're all waiting for it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still keeping up with my writing. I'm running a Shadow Dart campaign with friends every Thursday night. So, keeping myself entertained, keeping I mean, there are a number of projects I'd like to get involved with, but doesn't seem like the time is right to do that right now. And I need to get back to finishing my Lincoln Bright novel series. I've just taken a bit of a hiatus from writing that. But I've just been enjoying myself, going to cons every now and then, meeting fans, coming and doing podcasts, and just taking each day as it comes, and hoping that the next day is going to be better than the last. So there you go.
Your overall knowledge of the franchise, this should definitely bring you back for the upcoming iteration they have for Power Rangers.
That would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. And my final comment to you, Mr. Fielden, before we end here, and I noticed too, when I talked to Chris about this, Chris noticed I said this to every guest star, and I say, that's my point. That's why I say it, because I did this podcast. I started this podcast as a way to, as a format, like as a way to not only bring on the people I grew up idolizing and being fans of, like since, I was a kid and growing up, but as a great chance to try out journalism too. With that being said, I'm going to say this final comment to you, and I say this to every guest star I have, and I mean it, and I always mean it every single time I say it, because this is all passion, this is all heart for me saying this to you, sir, and I'm going to say it like that. It might sound like a broken record, like a needle that's constantly moving, but this is it. I want to say this to Mr. Villain, that it's unfortunate that you don't have this incredible ability like Zordon does, but you do have this incredible gift, sir, and that is you could take a 30-something-year-old fan like this dude here and bring him way down here and make him feel like that little kid again, watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and collecting the action figures and playing the video games and going to the movie. And for that, I just wanted to say thank you for not only this incredible interview, but I want to thank you for the memories you gave all of us, you know, growing up watching Power Rangers. And you get this a lot, that you are part of the childhood because as a longtime Power Ranger fan, any kind of Power Ranger fan just wants to show their appreciation and respect for what you've done for the franchise.
He's right.
Thank you.
And I don't know how I did all that in one shot, but I don't know. I went on. I literally did not stop at any.
You need to believe in yourself more. Believe in yourself.
Yeah, Pete.
And this is a rhetorical question. Nobody has to answer this, but how many words was that per sentence that I just said?
I have no idea. I mean, you said it in one sentence.
Watch the video, man.
No, we need to hire a stenographer.
Who knows, my dude?
But in all seriousness, sir, I'm going to send you a copy of this when it's all edited. You will get a copy of this, and I'm going to make sure I share this because you are, and it's, you know, I just want to say that again, thank you for the childhood memories you gave all of us. Thank you for this interview, and we're going to conclude, and this is where everyone knows what's going to happen next. Chris, you know what's going to happen next. Kwame, Jess, let's do it, and that is thank you, David.
Thank you, David. You're the one and only Zordon. You'll always be Zordon.
Yes, you will. To us, you will.
Yes.
Always.
And may the power protect you.
And you.
And you, sir. Everyone have a great night, and I will see everyone soon.
Well,
Bye.
hey guys.